All right, guys. So today we're going to jump right in. If you aren't generating organic revenue, then something's wrong with your organic demand generation engine. I know that's really tough to hear because a lot of companies will not make that their North Star KPI because, quite frankly, it takes a lot of pieces to do that. Okay. But in 2024, if you aren't generating organic revenue, then we need to focus on your organic demand generation pipeline because something in that pipeline is broken. And we're going to be talking about ways to develop a sustainable organic demand generation engine that actually builds your pipeline. Okay. So, in order for us to do that, we first need to understand everything from your consumer's perspective first. And I think this writer did a very good job at putting the percentage behind what you're probably already experiencing. More than 80% of B2B buyers that are making decisions are choosing from the top 2 to 3 top of mind brands before they even enter into a sales funnel. So when you think about that, very much so, like the writer said, the battle is won before it even begins. And I want you guys to really understand this because it means that if you aren't showing up in the right place at the right time to the right people, you will not generate organic revenue. Your content will fall flat. Now, if we go down and see what this writer, this consultant was saying, if we come down here and we see what this consultant is saying, and he consults B2B SaaS companies, so he works with lots of them, he stated exactly what this writer stated from a consumer's perspective. The challenge that most CMOs and VPs are getting at SaaS companies are they want to get more from the content that they're already creating. They're creating the blog posts, they're creating the newsletters, they have a podcast, they're doing all of that, but they're not getting the right traction that they feel like they should be getting. Number two, they have challenges finding writers with the right expertise to give their brand the authentic nature that they actually need to get the right audience. And number three, they're missing that thought leadership, so that engagement internally to help bring these pieces, these content pieces to life. And number four, they want to expand beyond keyword driven content because they feel as though SEO is probably not the right channel to do that. Well, today we need to pull back the pieces on understanding what a high producing organic demand generation team consists of. Before we even get to content creation, before we even get to doing the acts, we first need to understand what does this content in the wheel of organic demand gen engine, what pieces am I missing, or what pieces make up a healthy team that actually gets me to generate organic revenue in the way that these billion-dollar companies have done it? Okay, because there is a system behind that. So let's take, for instance, Credit Karma. I worked at Credit Karma, so I can personally vouch for what they're doing. So now I really want you guys to pay attention to the kinds of roles that Credit Karma has. So they have growth marketing, they have a copywriter, they have a senior brand strategist, they have market researcher, they have senior content strategist, they have a creative project manager, they have managing editor, they have product marketing. So they have a senior editor, they have content design and AI, they have lots of information, but I want you to guys to focus on those roles that I've just listed, okay? In addition to the regular engineers and the analytics, etc. Those are some of the roles that they have at Credit Karma. Now, I want you to take a look at what an actual organic demand gen team that's actually bringing in organic revenue consists of. All right, so here we are with what actual pieces of a high producing organic demand generation team looks like. Okay, so they have writers, of course, they have editors, they have a manager, they have copywriter, they have a technical SEO, they have CRO, they have a content strategist, they have an SEO manager, they have dev, and they have software engineering, right? We're missing product manager, we're missing growth marketer as well here. But fundamentally, for content's sake, for producing organic revenue, these are the key pieces that if you look under the hood, that every enterprise level company that's generating enterprise level demand is going to have in some capacity. And so whenever people say, okay, I'm at, 5 to 10 to 12 to 15 million ARR, and you just want to hire writers for hiring writers' sake, right? Just to produce content, or you want to create content on a podcast, etc. I say, well, based on the content production, You only have So, based on all of these pieces, whenever you create content and you say, okay, I want to hire writers, you only have 10% of the pie. So, whenever you're creating content, right, look at this percentage of the 9 or 10 people that we have, that everything is pretty much weighted the same. You have 10% writers, editors. So whenever you create content, you have to look at every single piece of this. Like every single piece is pretty much weighted the same. Content writers probably have a little bit more percentage wise. So I would say like this is weighted 12%, and then everything else below this is probably going to be weighted at 10%, 9%. So there is a small variation. But if you only focus on one piece of this pie, you're still missing 80 to 90% of the pie. And let's just say internally, that you have an editor and a manager. Well, you're still missing 70% of the pie. So now let's break it down to what your focus point is probably at every stage of hiring. So if you focus on just hiring writers, your focus point is content production. It's not generating organic revenue, and it's probably not even generating traffic gains at that point. So if you have an editor, if you have a manager, if you have an editor, if you have a manager, then you're probably in between the 30 to 70% mark. So your focus point is producing content, okay? So no matter how great that content is, no matter how much effort you put into that content, because so many of these metrics are going untouched, that content is not going to have the same type of velocity that it could possibly be having. So you could be creating really great content, but it's not going to be going as far as it could because you're missing a content strategist. You're missing a dev, you're missing a software because you need to understand the code of every single page, right? You need that technical SEO so you can help that content be seen in the algorithm, and you have to have a technical SEO to be able to do that. So these are the things that I want you to focus. These are the things that you're probably focusing on is content production. Now, whenever you have an agency approach, and what most agency approaches take is they take a focus on traffic gains. So they will have a writer, you'll have an editor, you'll have a manager, and sometimes you'll have a copywriter. But where the soft spots are, especially when it comes to agencies, is they don't have a technical SEO, they don't have a CRO, they don't have a content strategist, right? And they don't have a dev and an engineer to help you implement those things to give you the visibility on your content to show you, hey, this is working, this is not working. They're just focused on traffic gains and they're not focused on organic revenue. But with our approach, which is the AI SEO growth marketing approaches, our focus point is organic revenue. And the only reason why we were able to do this is because we saw in the marketplace what was actually working, right? So in the SaaS space, whenever I use this scenario all the time, and I have a case study that also shows you how we got to develop this product. But we saw that the more and more pieces we added to our team, the better we became and the better results that we ended up having. So to the point where when we would create content, we would actually be seeing that content generate revenue because we had every single piece of the pie added on to that content. So that content velocity that we were getting, or the content that we were creating, was seeing so much traction and so much better than the other partners that my client had, because we had doubled down on having these different pieces in our team. So this is why we focus on organic revenue and not just solely traffic and not content production, because our North Star KPI is getting you organic revenue. Now, the overall cost for doing these kinds of things, 'cause I know people want to say that, like, what is the cost? I'm not $1 billion, SaaS company just yet. Well, let's just look at the cost of doing it in different ways, of looking at getting organic revenue in different ways, right? So in-house, if you wanted to do this, you would probably need to have your content manager, your SEO, and maybe an editor, right? So I would say around 20K plus the cost of outsourcing writers and anything else you need. So this is just at minimum for a small size project is 20K plus outsourcing costs. And then every single 10K, I would say it goes based on the complexity of the project. So you add 10K based on the complexity of the project, not counting our outsourcing costs. So it's going to cost you more. This is just the baseline. Now, if you outsource individually, it's going to be relatively cheaper because you can offshore this information. So I would say cost is going to be around 15K for a small size project, 25K for a medium size, and then it gets a little bit more pricier when you go to large scale because you have to factor in a couple of different things like where the person is and the tech stack that they use, etc. So if you were to outsource this individually, the only thing I would say to this when you outsource individually is quality assurance, which is so important to a SaaS company. Is you need to make sure that the quality of your articles are still top tier because that's what your consumers are going to see. So if they see a luck laster or a product, if they see a product that is or content that is just subpar, then that's what they're going to think of your brand. And you have to be very critical when it comes to looking at those things. Now, if you go the agency route, once again, their focus is traffic. So they're not going to be leveraged for those other pieces. So it'll give you a cheaper product when it comes to creating content, and you may see traffic gains, but once again, traffic gains are not always equal to organic revenue. And that's critical because the only way that you can measure the quality of that traffic is by understanding if it's generating organic revenue or not. So 8K, I would say for a small price, based on my research, small price project size, all the way to large size, 13 to 15K. Okay. Now, for a demand generation partner like myself, aka an agency, I don't really call ourselves an agency. I kind of cringe at that because I don't want to be associated with what's going on in the agency space. But if you are a demand generation partner like myself, your smallest ticket item is going to be 12K because once again, you're leveraged for organic revenue. And then for large size, you can go up to 35K, even more for enterprise size projects. But you're not going to see anybody with a demand generation partnership with anything lower than 12K if you really want to get organic revenue. Now, the major drawbacks of doing things BAU, so doing things like by hiring writers and, you know, focusing on piecemealing your way to that next level of growth, is your content doesn't move the needle. Once again, you do not have all of those critical pieces, or if you don't have those critical pieces, your content will not move the needle. This is what's needed to help your content, number two, be seen. So once again, 80% of the battle is won before it even begins. So if your content is seen, then there's nothing that's dripping down to that pipeline. And number three, your company stagnates. That goes back to what most CMOs and VPs are experiencing. Their company is stagnating. Their marketing qualified leads are stagnating. It's because you don't have enough in the organic demand generation engine to move that content further along the pipeline. And number four, this is probably the biggest con, is you're built for slow and steady and not for high and impactful. And if you're a SaaS company, you need to be leveraging for high and impactful because we all know if you aren't growing, you are steadily dying. You know that, I know that, it's a common truth. So you have to aggressively attack what's not working. Because if you aren't generating organic revenue, someone is in your space and they're taking up more space and more space and more space. Because what I love about organic demand generation is it compounds on itself. So if you have an engine that's working, as long as you keep the factors the same, the organic engine is going to continue to run and build on itself, right? That's the most beautiful thing about organic demand generation, and that's why I'm in this field. And so, how does AI SEO growth marketing fill in the gaps? In addition to what we just mentioned, number one is it allows your internal team to focus on the business versus creating demand while growing the business. We all know that AI products are not cheap products, right? So, you need to have a targeted demand generation, almost like a calculation to I have this percentage of demand, I have this percentage that's going to flow through, convert to my email list or to convert to marketing qualified leads, and then sales qualified leads, and then thereon. So the more targeted demand that you get, the more you know that your pipeline is going to be filled. So, and number two is we have a SaaS trained and experienced team. And the reason why this is powerful is because we know that your product roadmap is going to change. We know that you're going to have features launched, you're going to be doing all sorts of things to improve your customers' UI. And we match your speed because we are built for iteration. So because we leverage AI, which is point four, we're leveraging efficiencies for all parties. So that way we're able to quickly iterate as your company scales and launches features, which is what is so impactful when it comes to creating more demand. Is creating more of the features and products so more people can come and use your products. Okay. And number three, I'm kind of going out of order, but we combine 90% of the most critical SEO and content elements under one flow. Since all of our internal writers are trained and they all have SaaS and SEO experience, we spent 3 to 6 months in the field testing and learning and working with other clients before we're launched out. We have all of this information and all of this structure to give us the best output that we can possibly give. So, I know that most people will tell you dark social. I know that most people will tell you podcasts, but it's not about simply creating products. It's about how does the content create organic revenue, and that's what you should be focusing on. All right, guys. Well, like and subscribe for more information or content like this, or you can choose to work with us. We do have limited spots, so we do suggest that if you're going to apply, that you look to apply with us. We do have a process that we follow, but we hope to give you guys more content so that you can see that you should be generating organic revenue. And if you're not, we'll work on helping you fix that. All right. Have a good day. Till next time.